I'd always cherished the quiet, almost sacred rhythm of my Montana property. 5 acres of pine-scented wilderness stretched endlessly, the sunlight filtering through tall, swaying trees, dappling the ground in moving patterns of light and shadow. A small lakeside glimmer reflected the early morning sun in fractured streaks across the water, serene and unbothered, oblivious to the human concerns nearby. I had dreamed of this cabin since I was 23, imagining the smell of fresh-cut wood, the warmth of a fireplace, and the satisfaction of seeing my own hands shape every corner of my retreat. That day, however, my heartbeat skipped violently. The log platform, my carefully stacked, legally sourced timber, was empty. Tire tracks scarred the gravel like accusatory lines, angled oddly as though someone had trespassed with both intent and care. I sank to my knees, hands trembling, staring at the evidence that screamed violation. Every pulse raced, adrenaline surged, and my mind flickered between disbelief and rage. This wasn't a minor mistake. It was an invasion of everything I had built. Every dream stacked log by log. The cold spring air bit at my cheeks, but it was nothing compared to the chill settling in my chest. I tried to regain composure, forcing myself to step inside my rustic cabin office, but there it was, a pristine white envelope from the Willow Bluffs HOA. It sat innocently atop scattered receipts, invoices, and drone photos, yet the mere sight of it felt like a gauntlet thrown. My hand hovered over the envelope, hesitating, almost fearing the words it might contain. Opening it, I found accusations that were both absurd and precise. Theft, rule violations I hadn't even known existed, threats of fines, insinuations that painted me as a criminal in my own property. My breath caught, disbelief clawing at my chest. Every fiber of my being rejected the notion that someone could so casually misrepresent truth. The cabin, usually a haven of calm and strategy, felt smaller, heavier, suffocating under the weight of bureaucracy and falsehood. How could this be happening? How could my sanctuary, carved from sweat and patience, be challenged by distant people who didn't even understand my life? I walked back outside, letting the sharp scent of pine and the soft ripple of the lake try to soothe me, though the emptiness of the gravel platform made it nearly impossible. The logs weren't just timber. They were the foundation of months of planning, hard labor, and vision. Every morning had been filled with the symphony of frost crunching under my boots, the distant call of a raven, the rhythmic tapping of tools shaping the beams in my mind before they even touched the ground. My cabin, almost complete, now seemed vulnerable, fragile, exposed to forces I couldn't yet name. The serenity of Montana's wilderness had always felt like a protective cloak, but now I realized even isolation could not shield you from human ambition and the absurdity of bureaucracy. Each gentle breeze through the pine needles seemed to whisper a warning. Watch closely, protect what's yours, and prepare for the unexpected. Willow Bluffs was the antithesis of my life, perfectly polished, unnaturally pristine. Streets gleamed as if scrubbed daily. Lawns were so manicured they seemed unreal, and fake lakes reflected a sky that never seemed to cloud over. Karen Stonewell, the president of the HOA, embodied this rigidity. Mid-50s, stiff blazer, hair overly styled, her fake smile sharp enough to cut glass. She exuded control, measured authority, and a kind of chilling perfectionism that immediately unsettled me. I stood in contrast, jeans, canvas jacket, sawdust stains, hands roughened by labor, eyes wary but alert. I realized how alien I appeared in her world of order and micromanaged lives. This first encounter was like stepping onto a stage with an invisible audience ready to judge every move, and I already felt the tension pressing in from all sides, foreshadowing battles I hadn't yet imagined. The first HOA meeting was a slow, suffocating buildup of tension. Beige walls, folding chairs, and a plastic podium created a space that seemed sterile, neutral, but every glance, every comment carried the weight of judgment. Karen and the board projected blurry photographs of my logs, suggesting violations I couldn't fathom. Their voices were calm, almost soothing, but there was venom beneath the surface, an intent to intimidate and belittle. I could feel my pulse quicken as I clenched my fists at my sides, reminding myself to stay composed. Every attendee's gaze seemed to slice through me, weighing my worth, my integrity, my right to my own land. This was more than a confrontation. It was an assault on everything I had built, and I knew instinctively that the fight was just beginning. Back at the cabin, I transformed my workspace into a war room. Receipts, GPS logs, drone photos, and Slack messages were spread meticulously across the wooden desk, every piece of paper a brick in my defense. I leaned over them, tracing dates and numbers with my fingers, memorizing every detail. The lamplight cast shadows over the documents, turning ordinary paper into evidence of something monumental. Exhaustion pressed on me, but it was tempered by a fierce resolve. I couldn't allow misinformation, bureaucracy, or arrogance to rob me of what was mine. Every line of data, every timestamp, every photograph became a weapon in a battle I hadn't chosen but could not ignore. Each piece of proof was a small victory, a reassurance that truth and diligence could outmatch falsehood and intimidation. To ensure no stone remained unturned, I began covert surveillance of the construction site. From hidden vantage points, I watched beams being stacked, logs installed, workers unaware of the silent observer capturing every detail. My camera zoomed in on burned serial numbers on the logs, a subtle but irrefutable signature of ownership. Every snap felt like an act of defiance, a reclamation of control. I felt the tension in my shoulders, the rapid beat of my heart echoing in my ears. The suspense was nearly unbearable. Each photograph was a promise that truth would be revealed. Every shadow, every movement captured through the lens told a story that Karen and her board could no longer obscure. A story I would wield with precision. The courthouse felt like a pressure cooker. Judge at the bench, gavel poised, reporters leaning forward, cameras flashing occasionally. Karen's stiff posture faltered under the scrutiny of the room. Hands clenched, jaw tight, her facade of composure cracking. I stood calmly, canvas jacket dusted faintly with the grit of Montana's land, holding my meticulously compiled evidence. Julia Canwell, my attorney, exuded unshakable confidence, every movement and word calculated to reveal the truth with precision. The atmosphere was electric. Time slowed, breaths hung in the air, and the stakes felt cosmic. It was a turning point, a showdown between petty authority and rightful ownership, and I could feel the room leaning into every revelation, every subtle display of power, every whispered gasp from the audience. Then the moment arrived. The projection screen lit up. Delivery receipts, GPS logs, drone footage, Slack messages, all irrefutable proof. Karen's smug smile vanished, replaced with shock, disbelief, and the faint tremor of panic. Every eye in the courtroom fixated on the screen, absorbing the clarity of truth. I watched silently, my emotions a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet triumph. Each document, each timestamp, each image meticulously gathered over countless hours of work revealed the absurdity of their accusations. The power dynamic shifted irrevocably. Victory was methodical, understated, yet overwhelming. I felt the tide turn, not with theatrics, but with the undeniable weight of fact and perseverance. Weeks later, standing outside the finished lakeside cabin, I inhaled the scent of pine and fresh timber, the sunlight glinting off the polished roof. The gravel platform was empty, untouched, secure, a visual affirmation that the battle was over. Karma, my loyal, imposing mutt, sat alert beside me, ears twitching at every sound. Neighbors passed by, offering smiles, tools, or simply nods of respect, gestures that reminded me that human connection could be as grounding as land ownership. The warmth of golden hour sunlight, the tranquility of the lake, and the sturdy presence of the cabin itself, all combined to create a deep, satisfying sense of victory. I had reclaimed not just land, but dignity, pride, and peace. Inside, sunlight poured through windows onto the carefully finished beams. One beam from the second delivery bore a simple but potent inscription. Not every HOA knows who they're messing with. The grain of the wood glowed in the light, the message clear, a permanent reminder of struggle and triumph. I paused, tracing the letters with my fingers, allowing a quiet, satisfied smile to form. Karma lay sleeping nearby, the rhythm of her breath grounding me. This cabin wasn't just a structure. It was a monument to persistence, Proof that meticulous preparation, patience, and courage could overcome bureaucracy and intimidation. Every corner whispered the story of resilience. That evening, the fire pit roared warmly, neighbors gathered in casual, comfortable clusters, guitars strumming, beer and pie passed around. The cabin stood proud in the background, its logs glowing in the flickering firelight. I leaned back, relaxed, laughing freely for the first time in months, Karma curled beside me, tail flicking lazily. Conversations drifted through the crisp night air, bonds strengthened over shared laughter and triumph. The trials, the absurdities, the bureaucracy that had once loomed so large, all faded into the glow of the fire. This was victory, closure, and reclaimed community, an enduring reminder that persistence, truth, and courage always find a way to prevail.